I've been away so long, and Father, I don't know where I have gone. A tide brought me here, I called it home, a place I'd never known. It seems I'm caught between moving plates beneath my feet. I can see beyond the wall that's standing in the way. You are waiting on the other side. After all, I built it with my very own hands. So why is it so
Good evening and welcome to the July 24, 2013 meeting of the City of Glendale Civil Service Commission. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Yakubian?
Yes, present.
Commissioner Devine?
Present.
Commissioner Hatamian?
Present.
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
And Chair Gazarian.
Here.
And please note that Commissioner Manukian is joining us telephonically.
Next item, please.
Minutes.
Action. Any consideration of the minutes?
Yeah, motion to approve?
Second the motion.
All in favor?
You and I weren't here, so we can't act on it.
Sam? Sam,
sir.
are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Are you moving to approve the minutes of last meeting of July 9th?
So be it.
Okay, so then the record will reflect that we have 3 yeses and 2 abstentions.
That's correct. Next item, please.
Oral communications.
I don't see any cards. Anybody have any comments is welcome to come to the podium at this time. Seeing none, next item, please.
Recruitment and examination report.
Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this item is a recruitment and examination workload status report. We bring this to you each month, showing you the current recruitment activity of all the jobs that are in various stages of recruitment. It lists the opening, closing dates, exams that have been scheduled, and what the upcoming plans are for these processes. It is listed by the individual staff members and their departments. You'll see that, again, a moderate level of recruitment activity at this time. You will see the police chief recruitment, which is currently underway as of this week. We have lots happening in Water and Power, Parks Department, Public Works, and we just closed a police officer recruit process, and starting early August, we are planning to open a fire recruit, which will probably be quite a popular recruitment process. So lots of things happening, and again, this is a note and file item. If you have any questions, be happy to try and answer them.
Any questions, Sam?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Next item, please.
Eligible list established.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is, again, a note and file item. This is sort of the tail end of the recruitment process. When we do recruitments for salaried positions, we have the examination process. The culmination of that results in the establishment of an eligibility list. This report shows the activity that has occurred, or the lists that have been established since our last meeting approximately 2 weeks ago. And basically you have 6 lists that have been established, 2 which are open recruitments, and the remaining 4 are promotional. And you can see just an indication of how competitive and challenging our recruitment processes are, where you see a rather large number of applicants, and then once the process gets through the various exams, we end up with lists that are relatively small, between 1, 2, and up to 4 names for each of these. Again, each of these recruitments had various examination processes. Some had oral boards, some had written, some had supplemental questionnaires. And of course, the police officer lateral has all of those, including performance examination as well. So, again, if you have questions on any of these, I'd be happy to try and answer them. This is, again, a note and file item.
Seeing no questions and hearing none, next item, please.
Class specification for approval, Facility Services Coordinator.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is a request for the Commission's approval of a class specification for a newly established job classification, Facility Services Coordinator. This is a mid-management position which will oversee the coordination of facility projects, maintenance programs, and just overall building maintenance, mainly here at the City Hall facility, but also at outlying facilities. We have an office supervisor doing the bulk of this work right now. In addition to that, the staff report makes reference to 2 additional positions in this section which have been lost in the last year due to retirements. Well, one was a retirement, the other was a layoff, a facility superintendent and a assistant project manager position. And what we're doing is really combining those 2 positions into part of a third to form this facility services coordinator position, to sort of tie all these activities together. There's a lot of work being done, a lot of service calls, a lot of after-hours work. We needed this position to be middle management because it would be exempt from the Fair Labor Standards Act. The individual in this position will be called at weekends, all hours of the night, to address things that occur here at the facility and other outlying facilities. So, very important position. Again, it's new, and we do hope to fill this through a promotional recruitment upon your approval. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I have representatives from the department as well.
Questions? Any questions, Sam?
Nope.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
I think it's
Unanimous consent?
Yes.
Wonderful. Next item, please.
Job bulletin for approval, IT application specialist, Library, Arts and Culture.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, unlike the previous item, this is a job bulletin for approval. A bulletin is very similar to a job specification, except the bulletin is what we actually post and conduct a recruitment off of. We rarely bring bulletins for Commission approval, but there are certain requirements that certain types of bulletins be brought to your meeting for approval. And in this case, we're doing 2 things that require the approval of the Commission. One, we are slightly modifying the minimum requirements for this position to where it deviates slightly from the approved class specification for this position. And those minimum requirements have to do with we're looking for a specific level of experience working in a library setting. And the other reason this is coming before the Commission is the fact that the previous recruitment we did for this was done on a promotional basis, and now we're seeking to take it from a promotional basis to an open basis. And we do that and, again, have the Commission review it in case there's any opposition to that internally within the city, in case there are employees either in the library or in the IS department who feel that this should be kept as a promotional recruitment, restricted only to city employees. This bulletin, again, there are a variety of reasons for having this as an open recruitment. The department is looking for some specific experience in the library arena, And we have, again, representatives from the library here if you have specific questions on that. But I want to make clear to the Commission that this was put in the agenda. It was also, this bulletin was sent to the Employee Association if there are any concerns that they would have with this going open. And I don't see anyone from the Employee Association or anyone who might be here to object. So with that, this is here for your approval. If you have questions, again, I'd be happy to try and answer them. Ms. Akopian from my staff is here, as well as the director of our library section, as well as the director of our information services department as well. So,
Yes.
So is it fair to say that the promotional recruitment process was not successful?
okay.
There was no interest, or?
Commissioner Yakubian, we didn't attempt a promotional recruitment process.
Not at all.
Had there been candidates that the department would have felt would qualify or have the interest, then the decision might have been made just to do this on a promotional basis. But in this case, the request to our department was to have this as an open recruitment from the get-go. And again, our responsibility is to ensure that interested employees are notified of this and that they have the right to come and object. Again, to my knowledge, we've not heard any significant opposition to this move. So, again, we're asking that it be an open recruitment.
Along that line, how were the employees notified? How and when were they notified of this change from the promotional to open?
I'll have Ms. Akopian answer that, but it's typically a week or two prior to this posting. An email goes out, a copy of this goes to the Employee Association.
Commissioner Devine and Commissioners, Rosie Akopian, Human Resources Analyst, excuse me. Mr. Doyle is correct. The notification was done via both email and verbal communication with the Employee Association. I explained thoroughly what the department is seeking to accomplish, which is to go out and conduct an open recruitment. And I asked that inquiries be made if any internal candidates, both in the library or IS department, feel that there may be any concern for loss of opportunity, that we be notified as quickly as possible, and there's been no concerns raised. And again, the department heads for both of the departments discussed it with their staff as well, and have had no concerns raised to their level.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hatamian?
Good evening, Mr. Kopian. I do have one question. What will the examination consist of? Is there going to be actual written examination with a oral combination, or will it just be 100% oral?
As the bulletin states, it will be 100% oral examination. However, the examination will have technical questions included, looking at specifically the breadth and depth of the candidate's experience in those very specific library software applications that we're looking for the candidate to have. We need someone to basically walk in and be able to start working and programming and utilizing these applications and work on the RFP that the library is looking to do. So it is going to be an oral exam, but a very complex oral exam.
And if I may have a follow-up question to Mr. Doyle, typically with these types of examinations, do we usually have a written examination where we create a list and band the employees based on their knowledge and qualifications, and then go to a step 2 where we do an oral? I guess my concern is if we do it in this format, it may create a subjective process in the examination, if that makes sense at all, by bypassing a written examination portion and banding.
Yes, Commissioner Hatami, the process, first of all, we don't have banding. Our civil service rules and our charter call for a rule of 3. So we are, ultimately, when we establish a list, it's the appointing authority only can look at 3 candidates at a time. Okay. But in this case, there is not a written exam that would be, I would say, available for a position this specialized. It's a very broad, generic job classification, but we're utilizing that job classification to try to find somebody with a very specific niche in a certain type of work. And it'll be incumbent upon us to design an oral exam process that is very, very objective, that addresses those specific types of software programs that are dealt with in a library system. And we actually believe there are people out there with these skills. It may require us to take someone from another library system, but the intent would be to, again, construct a very technically focused oral board exam to make sure the person has not only those technical skills but also the ability to communicate well and articulate what their knowledge is, and there'll be components of customer service and their communication style that also get addressed in the evaluation of those candidates.
And typically with an oral examination, how many members do you have on a panel? Is there a panel, or is it just one individual that will conduct?
It would be a panel. We would seek subject matter experts from other library systems, and the staff would brief them as to what our specific needs are. We prepare those technically oriented questions, and again, as you probably saw from our earlier report, which addressed the eligible lists established, these processes are anything but easy. Typically, we'll have, even for promotional exams, we might have 8 or 9 or 10 candidates, and we may end up with a list of only 3 or 4 that pass. We're very strict on who we put on our eligibility lists. So we're optimistic that we can find the right person for this job. It's just going to take us outside this organization to find it.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Doyle.
Sam, you have any questions?
No, sir.
I have a couple of questions. Ms. Agopian, I see that the educational requirement is only a high school diploma, yet the position seems to call for a great deal of ability that one might wonder how could a person only with a high school diploma and a desirable AA degree or an AS degree would ever be found to fill the position. And in conjunction with that, I see that the position is going to be open for only a period of 10 days. Do you think that's a sufficient period of time to bring in a pool of candidates and qualified ones at that?
Chair Gazarian, thank you for both very relevant points that have been discussed. With regards to the education, we didn't want to amend the actual job specification requirements, which do only require high school diploma. The department was looking to require a bachelor's degree, but that would have made the qualification requirement amendments, which would basically be much more exclusionary than having the high school diploma. So we just decided not to make that change in addition to this being an open recruitment. And with regards to the time posting of the bulletin, in the recent, at least minimal year, every open recruitment has netted well beyond the number of qualified candidates applying, and it creates a huge burden on our staff and the department to review, up to 300 to 400 applications for a single vacancy. So my recommendation was to open it for the minimum 2-week period. If we don't see a sufficient pool of applicants coming in, we can always extend the filing period, but at least we have that freedom to make that decision. Instead of the other way, if I post it for a month and we end up getting hundreds every week, we wouldn't be able to shorten the period.
Or perhaps if you had raised qualifications, then you would have less, because here it seems like every high school graduate with a little bit of knowledge of what he or she may perceive to be sufficient may be an applicant.
The requirements of the experience are really what we're looking for. And again, at the end of our discussions, it was agreed that if someone only has a high school education,
Without the
however,
experience,
has this level of experience that we're looking for in the library setting, we would be willing to look at that person versus losing them just because they don't have the education but still have the experience.
I see your reasoning. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Move to approve?
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous?
Yeah.
Sam, you're okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, unanimous consent. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Copian. Next item, please.
Advertising expenditure report, April 2013 to June 2013.
Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is the quarterly advertising expenditure report addressing the fourth quarter of the 2012-2013 fiscal year. The report indicates we had a total budget, advertising budget of $13,900 for the entire fiscal year, and I still marvel at how much we've had to cut that advertising budget. As to just a few years ago, it was in the neighborhood of $50,000 to $60,000. But as I've said many times, advertising has become a lot more affordable as we really target our efforts for various websites that are either free or very, very low cost. And in most cases, you end up targeting the right people for these positions. But in spite of the fact, $13,900 is very low for a city our size and for the recruitment load that we do. But we typically do stay within that budget, except this year we did exceed it by about $1,600. That's not significant, and in our M&O budget, we can make up for it in other areas. But again, this report addresses the fiscal year, last fiscal year, this coming fiscal year. It's I believe we have the same amount budgeted, and hopefully we'll be able to work within the budget. This report also does give you a bit of a sample of where we have advertised and the different types of publications and websites. The report's broken into three areas on that second page. We have publications that target the ethnic communities. We have second one addresses publications and websites that target specific trades or specific types of occupations, and then the third section is those that are relating to just general outreach, such things as newspapers and some of the websites that are non-specialized. As you can see, the amounts we spend are listed there. If you have questions, we try to spread our advertising dollars around. We try to do it wisely, but nevertheless, those are. This is the activity that has occurred roughly from April 1st to June 30th of 2013. If you have questions on that, be happy to try and answer them. Ms. Kasparian, who's sitting up here, prepares this report. Questions of her, she's available as well. So.
Commissioner Hatamian?
Yes, one question, Mr. Doyle. How does the city determine which position it would advertise within a publication? Because I noticed that, for example, in the Asian Pacific Careers, we have the position of a fire cadet, but then in Osprey's, for example, which is an Armenian publication, we don't have the same position, and vice versa. How does the city determine which position it's going to advertise in which publication?
It's, Commissioner Hatamian, it's largely up to the analyst doing that recruitment. Determining where he or she thinks that they'll get the most bang for their buck, and there's no methodology for, particularly with the ethnic publications, for picking one over the other. Our objective is certainly to do a broad outreach, and given the ethnic makeup of the city of Glendale. We certainly hope to have an outreach to community to ensure that our workforce is reflective of the community, but really there's no particular rhyme or reason. We try to do it fairly and get the word out there as best as possible. So.
That's it. I remember it was as if yesterday we discussed this budget. I guess that was 3-4 months ago when we did a quarterly analysis. And if I recall correctly, Mr. Doyle, I think in years past we have not exceeded the budget, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we've
and then we have
kept it
lost that money, because I remember that question came up. What happens to the surplus? Do we get to keep it? But
Correct.
no, we didn't get to keep it. It goes back in the general fund. So.
That's correct. And, as bad as I feel about exceeding our budget by $1,600, these last couple of years have been tough on our budget, and we've had to make cuts, you well know, in staffing citywide, in my own departments, and every department is just having to pare down their budgets, and it's the advertising budget is no exception to that.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Doyle. No further questions being raised. Next item, please.
Reports past due employee performance evaluations.
Mr. Chair, this is the graph indicates all the city departments and the past due performance evaluations. You can see the sort of the far left column. There's a X next to those departments that have no past due job performance evaluations. We have 5 of them, and then there are some that have first late notices, and some that have second late notices. As you know, if there's a third late notice, meaning that department has been notified that they have a late performance evaluation, they are required to come before the commission and explain what the purpose is for that tardiness. So. Again, this is a note and file item. In the past, we've had commissioners want to name those departments that have the no past dues. So, to continue that tradition, that's up to you.
I will yield to Commissioner Devine.
Thank you. I was just curious. As I recall, some of our past reports have a lot more X's in the no past due column. I see a greatly reduced number on this report, and I'm wondering if there's something that's happened in the system or there's a reason for that.
If Commissioner Devine, if I had to say, it would have to do with just the workload of our managers and supervisors who are tasked with completing these evaluations. In all honesty, and you're seeing. My own department, I have late evaluations, which that was never happening in the past. This department eliminated in the last 2 years the city has eliminated well over 200 jobs. And, last year we had a retirement incentive. Last year we had layoffs. And we really have lost a lot of people. And a lot of those retirements and a lot of those layoffs affected our management and mid-managerial classifications. So you have individuals who used to supervise 3 people, and they may now be supervising 6 or 7. Jobs have been combined, departments have been combined, and again, if I could answer, this. If I could provide you with the best answer, that would be it. It's just the workload.
Thank you.
Questions? Well, I'm pleased to say that there are 0 third notices, unless I'm not seeing correctly.
That's correct.
Thank you for that report. Next item, please.
Agenda forecast.
Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, we have the agenda forecast. As you know, there are 2 hearings currently occurring, and closed session hearings. In addition to that, we were looking at the August 14th Commission meeting as a possible cancellation. That issue came up, as I believe we have one or 2 commissioners who might have a conflict on the 14th, as well as I will be on vacation that week. So if it's the Commission's desire to cancel that meeting, we can established that now. And other than that, there's really nothing. And in late August, we'll prepare the annual status report on hourly employment. But other than that, we can just kind of play it by ear and see what comes up for our upcoming meetings.
Any thoughts or comments? Very well. Next item, please.
Civil Service Commission staff comments.
Any comments? Yes.
Yes, I'd like to talk about the action City Council took 2 Tuesdays ago where they adopted the GPOA MOU. One of the items which maybe Matt could explain to it what happened, but basically it took the hearing process for police out of the hands of the Civil Service Commission in terms of having a hearing examiner do the cases, where the report would then come back to the full commission and we could modify or change or amend the report. With that in mind, I believe there was a sunset clause on that condition which required I think it was 2 years, the 2-year sunset clause, where after 2 years they would evaluate that process and determine whether it would be continued or not. With that in mind, and knowing that we just started a closed session hearing for the police, I would like to suggest, and if I can get concurrence from my other commissioners, that we put on the agenda for the 28th a discussion on whether or not we would want to have the case that we're currently going to start in September go through the hearing examiner process rather than have us hear the case.
And what I need to ask about that is, you started your comments by saying 2 Tuesdays ago the City Council took action?
Yes, they adopted the GPOA MOU. One of the conditions in that MOU was that the hearing examiner process be used for the police hearings. Another item on that, the current civil service rules allow the commission to assign a hearing examiner. So at this point, there would be no requirement to change the rules for us to do that process. There will be a need somewhere down the line for the rules to be amended so that process is included in there. The fact that it would be mandatory for those cases to go to a hearing examiner, but that would not impede us from doing that at this time, not impede us from allowing this to go to a hearing examiner at this time. And so I would like to put that on the agenda. We can discuss it amongst ourselves and decide whether or not we want to have that as a test case. One other thing that was done, the Chief DePompa was contacted and asked about his thought on doing it for that particular case. And he responded by saying that he felt it might be better to wait till a new process is established and all the ducks in a row, so to speak, before we do that. Also, the president of GPOA was contacted, and he wrote back saying that while he concurred with the chief's thought, he felt that this would be an excellent test case to go ahead and do with the hearing examiner. So GPOA is on board for having the hearing examiner do this particular case.
I will perhaps shock some by saying that I tend to agree with the chief. Without knowing the process and what process has been put in place.
Let me just,
I think we should put it on the agenda.
We're getting a high sign from the attorney. I think we need to talk about this as an agendized item.
Yeah.
Exactly. Chair Kazarian, this item is not on the agenda. It is a topic that is ripe for review by this commission. It does warrant a couple of different discussions. The one is one of process and how does the MOU amend the process of the commission. The second is the issue of a specific hearing moving forward, and having already assigned a hearing officer to that, and what steps will need to be taken to effectuate something different. So if I'm understanding Chair Devine's request, he would like to have that process agendized, both of those issues agendized for a future meeting so that the discussion can be had by the commission, and we can certainly do that. probably at the meeting that
8/28?
August
that you've
28th.
proposed, yeah.
I'm okay with agendizing the item. In fact, I think it should be agendized and discussed thoroughly.
Absolutely.
We just need to figure out when the first date of hearing is on that upcoming case, and do we have enough time if we
September
do?
5th.
Yeah, we do.
So we do have from the 28th to the 5th to send the parties notice to select a hearing officer if we do decide to implement this new case with the hearing officer.
But there's quite a bit that needs to be done, but it isn't something that we can discuss at this meeting at this time. There is, though, concurrence that this item come back at a future agenda, and we will certainly do that. If we can bring it back sooner, we'll certainly try to do that, but
That
I
would
don't
be
think
my
we're going to be able to do
suggestion.
that.
I think that would be my suggestion. If we're going to seriously consider what the union had to say about using this as a test case, if it's possible for the commission to agenda this item prior to the 28th, where we can discuss and give it a fair shot, where we come up with the process prior to September 5th, you said, for the first date of hearing?
But we really do need to stop the discussion about this topic at this point. We will bring it back, and we will keep those dates in mind and notify the appropriate parties as to the process.
I ask that we agendize the item at a time sufficient enough, as Commissioner Hatamian suggested, for us to reach a consensus if we can, so that the parties are not being informed at the 11th hour that there's a change in plans.
Correct.
So with that in mind, Commissioner Devine suggested August 28th. I know that perhaps we will have a cancellation of the August 14th meeting, so I don't know where that leaves us with the September 5th commencement of a hearing, with a hearing panel already assigned, and I recall deadlines already set for opening briefs and things of that sort, and motions. So I'm not sure that GPOA wishing and wanting this to be a test case is doable. But again, we don't want to discuss it, so let's agendize it. I don't know who agendizes these things and how soon it can be done.
You do, and
I do. Well, I don't know how we can do this any earlier than the 28th. I understand Mr. Doyle is not here on the 14th. I would want Mr. Doyle to be present. So,
Mr. Chair and Ms. Varpeti, and I don't want to overstep this discussion or take it any further, but there are documents due on that particular case on as early as August the 6th.
I think way before, yeah.
It doesn't change the fact that the issue relative to the MOU and the process is something that the Commission should hear about and discuss further. The option of that particular hearing, we will try to present that to the Commission, but again, it's time sensitive. So I think that we could do the best that we can, but we'll have to work with the Chair in determining what is appropriate for that time.
Well, let's work and see if we can call a meeting if the rules permit, and notice a meeting and have one before too late, so that the parties will have sufficient notice if we are changing course.
I was going to suggest that, perhaps. Sorry.
Oh, it's all right. But I mean, I would like to add that there are two separate and distinct issues. I mean, there's the change in the process entirely, and then there's this particular case, and both items have to be agendized and discussed separately.
Right.
So while they're somewhat related, they're also standalone
I agree.
issues that need to be addressed.
I agree.
All right. Would it be possible to schedule a special meeting to discuss at least the one item concerning assigning this present case to a hearing examiner? So that the other thing I was thinking, again, without getting too far into the meat of it, was any of the documents that are due are things that would either be for the hearing panel, the three of us, or for a hearing examiner if we assign it. So it's not as if anything that we've assigned or any dates we've assigned could not be transferred over to a hearing examiner.
There's a lot of moving parts, and I can tell you that the extent of what we could discuss here tonight is whether or not to agendize the item. We've done that. We're aware of the dates, and we'll try to bring it back to the Commission in a timely manner so that you can act appropriately.
Commissioner Gazarian,
Yes.
you can also call for a special meeting as you indicated.
Yes, I think I will be considering that, but not at this moment. I will
Yeah.
consider that and get in contact with you folks through Matt Dole's office. Thank you. Very well. Next item, please.
Closed session for the following items. A, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, Hamlin et al. Versus City of Glendale Civil Service Commission et al., L.A. Supreme Court number BS 135361, and B, public employee discipline.
You meant to say LA Superior Court,
Sorry,
correct?
I'm sorry.
I think you said Supreme Court.
Sorry.
That's New York.
I apologize.
That's
Correction.
okay. Very well. I think this is the time that I would ask those who have
Well,
no
actually,
business with
on this first item, we were going to ask everyone to leave, and on the second item, this concludes the TV portion
That's
of the
correct.
meeting. We may perhaps have something to report out, but we're not certain at this
But
time.
not on tape.
But and if we do, it will not be televised.
Right.
So as it relates to item A, we would ask everyone to step out so that the commission may confer with legal counsel.